Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. My name's Dulta Doherty, and in this podcast series, I'll be interviewing investors, advisors, and entrepreneurs from the agency recruitment world in how to set up, scale, and operate a world-class recruitment company. This week, we're in for a bit of a treat. I've got David Stephen Patterson on. Most of you won't know him because I think a lot of his network's quite American central. He runs a group on Facebook, Headhunter and Executive Recruiter Community. So he's brilliant. Like, this guy is just top notch. So a lot of American recruiters, they can be a bit cheesy, you know. Sometimes it's a bit too cheese on toast for me. But this guy's the real deal. You know, he's been doing this for about over 20 years. He runs a coaching business where he takes on a few recruitment businesses each quarter and brings them through his process. He runs his own IT recruitment business. He's based out of Florida. And one of the things he's doing at the moment, like, he's doing this from a live learning bit in his group on Facebook, where he's showing us all how he can set up a new division or a new brand within from scratch. And he's doing it step by step in what he does for his marketing. So a lot of his stuff, like, he's a traditional old school recruiter, but he's reinvented himself. So he's mad into the marketing stuff. And that's everything from email to Facebook marketing, branding, blogging, vlogging. He's got the whole process in play with it. And he blends that together with traditional approaches. And he helps other people do it. So really good guy. We've had a few bits of noise while I was recording this, so I must apologise. It's only a little bit, so bear with it. The information he gives is well worth suffering through. My car alarm going off. He is, yeah. I'll just let you listen to it. You know, he's ahead of the game, this lad, and what a cool guy. All right, well, let us know what you think of it, and if you're in any doubt, just join his group on Facebook's for free, and have we listen to his weekly updates, and yeah, his community there is a real place for learning. And if you've any business questions, you can put it out to the group, and they all come back in detail. So yeah, I found it a good resource, and him to be very personable. Okay, great. Hope you all enjoy it, and let me know if you do. All right, take care. David Patterson, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. We've just had a newborn, so I haven't slept in about 2 weeks.
Well, good luck, man. I've got one on the way, due here in September, so I'm about to feel your pain, brother.
You're an old pro at this, though, aren't you?
That's right. I've got a 20-year-old son, an 11-year-old daughter, and a newborn on the way. So I'm on the 10-year plan, or also what I like to call poor family planning. So
I hope that 20-year-old son is dialing some candidates up for you while you're doing this.
No, I wish. He is an engineering student at U of A, so he has no interest in being a recruiter. He is in their engineering program on scholarship, and he wants to go into the Army officer program when he graduates. So he's all about going to the military and all that kind of stuff. So yes, he's doesn't want to follow in his dad's footsteps, which I don't blame him. You know, recruiting is a great industry and love it to death, but it's just not for some people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not something when I meet people I go, you know, you should do that. You should do what I do for a living.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, I always say that recruiting is a lot like the land of misfit toys. You know, we don't know how we got here. We don't all match together, but somehow we're all here in this industry. right? So that's the way I look at the
In,
world of recruiting.
yeah, in England we call it like an industry for wrong'uns. So
For
it's
writing?
wrong'uns. Yeah,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
people who've done the wrong thing, have taken the wrong path, and
Oh, okay.
have ended up in this magical career we have. So tell me, with that in mind, how how did you get into recruitment? When was that?
Well, I fell ass backwards into it. So again, I don't think anybody really plans to be a recruiter, and but people just kind of fall into it, and I followed the same story. So kind of showing my age here, but I came in after I left college, went to Arizona State, and then after that, I just happened to apply for a job. Hey, did you leave me?
What did you study in Arizona State?
I was a political science major.
Oh, okay. Why did you study that?
Well, because I watched a lot of Law and Order, and I thought it'd be really cool to be a lawyer until I realized um, what lawyers actually do and the hours that you work, and you really don't make a lot of money initially. And I just didn't want any of that life, so I pursued other avenues, and I fell ass backwards into recruiting.
So you're pretty young when you got into the industry then. What was your first gig?
So, so back in the day, we had newspaper job classifieds, and I happened to see an ad for a day labor company called Labor Ready. I think they're called True Blue now, I believe, but they were looking for a CSR, basically someone behind the counter to cut checks for these folks that you would send out daily to construction sites or to pick up trash. That was my first staffing gig. So started off with the lowest rung in staffing, and then eventually made my way to search a few years later. But that's where I started. So it really just kind of a random job that happened to hire me.
Yeah, and uh, what was your first experience of getting into search?
So I that was in Arizona, and I also spent some in St. Louis. But I ended up making my way here to Tampa, Florida, and I had enough of day labor. When you were dealing with people that are drunk on job sites and they're keying your car, and it's really that type of work, unfortunately. So I quit, and I had a buddy who happened to meet a recruiter or someone in search at a bar. He handed me her card. I called her and got a job or an interview with an MRI franchise. And at the time, I thought that I thought it was unbelievable that companies would pay 8, 10, $12,000 for a single person. I was used to placing people at construction sites where you make $1.50 on a spread. You pay them at the time $4.50, I think was the minimum wage, and that was the job that was the type of staffing I was used to. So I went into to search from that, and it was very interesting. And then I started recruiting in the insurance industry, recruiting underwriters. Didn't know what an underwriter was, but I was told, hey, look, you're going to work an insurance desk, you're going to recruit underwriters, and here you go. And that's how I started.
Yeah, cool. So just when you say search,
Mhm.
sometimes there's some things are lost in translation between the
Sure.
UK and America. Does that mean you were working as a contingent recruiter, or was it retained work, or?
Oh, gotcha. Well. So when I say search, that's just a broad term. So for me, at least or at least here, when I talk about search, it's really just direct hire placement, whether it's contingency, retained, or something in between. So, but to answer your question, when I first started, it was all contingency. I heard about this weird thing called retained, but again, it's belief structures being challenged. And at the time, I thought, well, why would a company pay me up front, right? Because even with that being said, when I first got into search, I thought it was unbelievable that a company would pay $10,000 to $15,000 for a candidate to hire somebody. To pay that up front, I thought that was just wishful thinking. So I was like I said, I was very new in the business and very naive
Yeah, and
as well.
we'll definitely jump into some of that. So give us an idea of what recruitment was like back then. Is it you in the yellow pages? Is this before LinkedIn?
Oh yeah, so yeah, it was, way before LinkedIn. Not really Yellow Pages per se, but it was very old school. So we didn't have email, or at least we had email, but we had one Windows computer, and we each of us got an hour a day on the Windows computer. So the rest of the time we had just one of those old school dummy terminals, the ones with the little green text, and so and our resumes were paper files, and we faxed resumes. We didn't email resumes, and so or we just presented a candidate over the phone verbally and not send a resume. So it was a lot of that. So in terms of the recruiting, really, in terms of sourcing and finding people, I used to do old school sourcing, meaning I would find out, okay, and let's say in Boston, there might be 20 insurance companies that would fit my niche. I would call them in a day and try to find out as many underwriters who worked there as possible, get their names from the receptionist. I'd ruse and I'd say, hey, I'm supposed to talk to, I can't remember the name. If I remember the name, I bet, or if I heard the name, I bet I remember who it was, and they'd start rattling off names. I'd write them down, knowing that I'd be calling them the next day with a pitch for the job I was recruiting on. That was basically the level of recruiting that I was doing. So no LinkedIn, purely phone, very, very old school.
Okay, awesome. And 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 you did that for how long exactly?
For a couple of years. Once I found that, so I was brand new in the business, but my first year I was the biggest biller in the office, and I was kind of the boy wonder, if you will. And so in doing that, I had a great time. So I'm really making the first great money in my life. But then I had my sights set for bigger and better things. I wanted to own my own firm. I was sick of paying 65% of my billings or my cash into the house for not, really, I wasn't getting a lot of support. So I quickly, or after a couple of years, went out on my own. So I
Yeah.
was only there for maybe 2.5 years.
Some of the main differences in the UK and America, there's much more of a culture of independent recruiters in America than the
Mhm.
UK. The UK is very centered around established businesses that are built to scale. And even though, when you're saying, oh, I'm sick of giving away 55% of my business, that would be an
Mhm.
unbelievable return in the UK for a recruiter working for a firm. But so,
Yeah, yeah.
so you went out on your own. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, what year was that? And what did you decide to do?
So that was, I would say, 2004, and I made a lot of mistakes. So, the one thing I'm really good at is taking a risk. I've got no problem taking massive risk and, and taking massive action. But that said, I have poor planning skills. So I did it, but I had no idea what I was doing. So it was definitely a bit of a transition, and I made a lot of mistakes along the way. But anyway, to answer your question though, 2004 is when I started my first firm.
Okay, cool. So walk us through those early days and some of the mistakes, because you know the, we
Well,
could probably all learn more from that than
sure.
anything.
What you want to hear? So I always tell people, look, paralysis by analysis is a real thing. You have to jump off the cliff. You have to look. At the end of the day, everybody, not everybody, but so many people talk about wanting to run their own business or be independent. So few people do it, or they're stuck in, well, maybe next month, maybe when I get this done, or maybe let me save this amount. And sometimes you have to just go. Now, with that said, for me, mistakes I made is my biggest mistake. I'll call it a mistake or whatever, but I burned through a lot of cash when I first started, so a lot faster than I thought.
What did you spend
And
your money on?
oh well, my last few months at my firm, I wasn't billing because I was basically what happens when you're looking out at something that you want to do. Oftentimes, it takes your focus away from what you're doing. So I went from being the biggest biller to slumping. So that's when I decided, well, I need to go ahead and just go. So I burned through my cash really my last few months there. And so when I started, I really started marketing myself heavily. I had to go to a new industry, so I went into SAP, which is what I focus on now, and
Wow.
I made my very first placement after 6 months of probably, gosh, I don't know, 8 to 9 turn downs on offers, right? And you're struggling as a recruiter, and you were out of cash, and you're working out of your bedroom. getting all these turndowns in a row. That's horrible. And so finally made my first placement with Valero Energy, it's an oil company in San Antonio. And it was about close to a $30,000 placement. So that was basically my starting capital. Unfortunately, I didn't incorporate, nor did I have a business bank account. So when I got that check, and I went to the I don't know, the Bank of America, whatever I was banking with, and said, "Hey, I need to open up a business banking account. By the way, here's a $30,000 check.
Oh no.
You don't know who I am." They said, "Hey, kind of take your business elsewhere." So I had to go to a check cashing establishment, and this is my big war story. And then when so they had to call this place called Amscot. They had to call my client AP to verify that it was a legit check. So that was embarrassing. And so I walked out of that Amscot in a very bad part of Tampa with close to, after I paid my fees, probably about $28,000 in cash in my pockets. So I was sweating bullets because I was in a very bad part of town and people get killed for a lot less. And that was my very first success as an independent recruiter. So when I look at people and they say they want the perfect scenario to get started, I say, look, that's how I started and I made it. So there's no excuses.
Yeah,
But
like we were in Calgary and the market crashed, and we were both working for firms there, and we just been there for 10 months, and my wife got laid off, and we just decided to take the rest of our savings and go to Guatemala, and we made our first placement from Guatemala. So that was us trying to do it in the third world. So yeah, people can do it from anywhere for sure.
yeah, definitely can. Really all you need is a phone and an old laptop, and there you go. And it's a backbone. It's really
So
and your
after,
willingness to take a risk.
yeah, and after you get a bit of wind in your sails, you're thinking, do you know what? Actually, we're okay. We got a bit of runway. I didn't get mugged on the way home. What happened next? What was like? Was there anything you did to scale your business up, or how did the next period of your business go?
So with that regard, and I wouldn't suggest this as the best way to do it now looking back, but
Sure.
I was a smile and dial guy, right? So now I'm a lot more nuanced my marketing and my sales and my approach to the market. But back then, I had no really formal sales training. I really had very little sales training at the MRI that I came from, and nothing against MRI, just the branch I was at. It was very very little training. It was just kind of just figuring out how to do it. So I was a smile and dial guy. I was 100, 200, 250 dials a day, and pounding the phones. That was my deal. So when I grew and started, I did what most recruiters do when they start their own independent firm. As soon as they get some cash in the bank and they have a lot of job orders that come in, you hire a recruiter to help you with the job orders that you have, and that's how I started. Got my first executive suite, and and then
All right,
hired a recruiter
you went
underneath
all
me.
out straight away.
Went all out, yeah, because I thought to grow as a recruiter, you needed a brick and mortar office. You need to hire a bunch of recruiters that were also smile and dial. And what happened is that for me as a brand new recruiter, I was never a manager, so I made one of the biggest management mistakes you can ever make is you hire people that are like you, right? So
Oh,
these other young kids that were, again, not a lot of sales skills, but really hard workers and willing to dial the phone and hire them in. And so I had one of those churn and burn operations for a while where we still did good business. We made a lot of money because the market was in such an upswing then. But I'm a big believer in really getting that foundation of search, really making those relationships, because I went through, the massive recession where I lost it all. Well, during that recession,
yeah. So
all these smile and dial recruiters get
let's jump into that piece with the recession.
sure.
So how
Yeah.
many recruiters did you have working for you before the recession happened?
I think it was right around 12,
Okay,
13
wow.
roughly. Yeah.
And were they all like 360? Were they like revenue generators, or did you have that split 180?
No, we had a mix. The majority were were 360. Then I had some others that were just strictly recruiting, and they would go back and forth between the 360 folks as needed.
Okay, so you're doing SAP. It's quite related to the financial services industry and finances and companies and all the rest. That recession happened. Did you react quickly? What happened to you then?
Oh, I didn't see it coming. Yeah, I didn't see it coming. Well, and by the way, SAP, it was really more IT. So the work I do is more large scale ERP stuff, and and so when the recessions happen, they still have these SAP departments. They still have these needs, but they just contract a bit. Or the first thing to go is the budget to pay recruiting fee. So we just saw a massive downturn in business. One of my biggest customers at the time was Accenture. I think I placed 50, if I remember correctly, I think it was 57 people in 1 year with Accenture. That was how hard we were hitting it, and then that all went away all of a sudden. And that was just a massive blow. So that was a big blow for us, but it was a big learning lesson. I mean, I quite literally had nothing, lost it all, and then I had to rebuild from the ashes to my current incarnation of the business.
How did you get the website, the SAPrecruiter.com? What an amazing website name.
Well, I just looked for it and found it. Here's the thing. What I found, and if you don't mind me kind of go back a little bit, because this really ties in. So I think a lot of recruiters have a very most recruiters are bad marketers. I'm a really big believer in that, and I have really spent the last few years, or last several years, really doing a deep dive and a massive self-study in marketing psychology and how to build relationships, and I think for a lot of recruiters, right, it's very easy for recruiters to go out and recruit, right? You, for example, ask average recruiter to call a VP of sales with an amazing VP of sales position, no problem cold calling. But ask that same recruiter to cold call the VP of sales and pitch your services. Same person, same recruiter. That recruiter either does a very poor job, or they're scared to do it, or will find any excuse not to. And the reason is because we have a poor understanding of marketing, and I did as well for many years. So when I really got into the psychology of marketing and got into internet marketing, digital marketing, etc., so I decided, well, I want to really focus on being the authority in the industry, giving back to the industry, and setting myself up as the face, the name of, let's say, SAP recruiting. And so part of that was, hey, I wanted to make sure I can get a website like the SAP Recruiter, and happen to see it available, right? And I think a lot of recruiters should do the same thing. If you're in finance, well, finance recruiters probably taken, but there's probably some iteration there somewhere that you can buy relatively cheaply and get as your own. And I think a lot of recruiters, if you do that and work on that personal brand, even if you work for a bigger company, that will serve you much more than what a lot of recruiters do, right? They spend a few years at Russell Reynolds and a few years here and a few years there, and they really don't ever build that brand, right? To become the recruiter in fill in the blank industry, right? So I'm a big believer. But anyway, that's how I got the website. I just happened to see it was available.
Very good.
And I make sure and grabbed it, and I make sure to grab every other iteration of it as well. So
very good. I'm going to jump. I'm going to jump more into marketing stuff in the later part of our interview, because I'm really interested in all the stuff you're doing. But just in the interest of continuity, you were rising from the ashes, as you put it, after the recession. Did you adjust your business model at all? Did you go down the same route as you did before and hire lots of similar people, or did you do it in a more safe manner, or how did that process go about?
No, I did it first. So at first, I decided to go back into the brick and mortar route again, and then a few years into that, decided to change. I was getting a little bit older, and wanted to didn't necessarily want.
So you're coming back after the recession, and you felt like taking a change of direction at a point. How did that come about? Like, where was the epiphany to do that?
Well, okay, so I really, at first, again, wanted to do things the way I had done them. But as I grew older, I wanted more of a life. I didn't want to be working 10, 12-hour days and dealing with that stress. And candidly, I wanted something more. So I decided originally, I said, well, look, I'm a great recruiter. Why don't I get into coaching? Like the folks like Danny Cahill and Scott Love, because during that time, I did become a much better recruiter. Worked with folks like Jeff Kay to really try to elevate my game and elevate myself in the industry. So I did that. But I was still very old school. Decided to get into coaching because I was kind of bored with recruiting. You talk to one developer, you talk to a million. It's like, you're asking the same questions all the time. So got into the realm or the rabbit hole of digital marketing and psychology of selling, and learned from a lot of the greats in the industry, Russell Brunson, Scott Olford, Jesse Older, Dan Henry, and just tons of those folks. And because I was originally going to use those techniques to market myself as a coach, and thought, man, I could really use this in the world of recruiting. And I actually implemented those same strategies in my practice, held off on coaching for a couple of years, and that led me to where I'm at now. So that was really the big shift. I would say, in fact, two shifts. The one is that training I got from Jeff Kay and to become a better recruiter. But after that, it was the education I got on the digital marketing side that really opened my eyes to the crazy possibilities that are now kind of ripe for the taking in the recruiting world.
And that's really interesting. And let's absolutely jump into that now. And so what were the key things that you started to learn at the start of your digital marketing journey?
Well, it's the psychology of selling. What I realized was that for a lot of recruiters, we're in that commodity mindset. I like to use this quote often from Jeff Hyman from Recruit Rockstars. I always pimp his book out all the time. So Jeff, if you're listening, you're welcome, and I expect my royalty check at some point. But I quote him in this book: 90% of all business problems are people problems in disguise. I'm probably butchering it, but you're not hitting quota. It's a talent issue. You can't get a product out to market. It's a talent issue. We are in a position to affect that more than any other business, more than any other profession, and we change lives on top of that. So why are we treated like a damn commodity? Working contingency, working for free, and so that was my big epiphany when I saw that was going on in the industry. I was working like that, and I did a great job for my clients, but at the end of the day, when you get somebody on the phone who has a need, you cold call and you get them, they don't know you, or they maybe kind of know you. Their first question is, what's your fee? Well, sir, hold on. Let me tell you about my service first. Let me do my intake form. At the end of my intake form, just like I was trained, I'm going to start off with 30%, and you're going to say 20%. And we're going to meet in the middle. And it's kind of the same standard thing, because I think for a lot of recruiters that either work independently or work for small firms, it's one thing to work for Korn Ferry and say, look, here's how we do it. This is work retained, and that's it. But when you don't have that name value, we're treated like commodities. That was really my big epiphany. And how can we gain a system to create this sort of authority, as a small guy, and compete with all those big names, and to break away from this commodity mindset that so many recruiters are stuck in.
Okay, cool. So with regards to the type of people that you're coaching right now, what size of businesses would you focus on? Would it be one-man bands? Would it be 1 to 10? Would it be even larger businesses?
No, smaller than that. So one-man bands to maybe or maybe have a few recruiters, maybe 8 to 10. That's kind of my sweet spot. If I could work with larger companies. However, what I find is that it's the folks in that range that really need the most help. So that's typically where I focus.
Okay, so let's walk through how that comes about. Obviously, you've got an amazing Facebook group that has, I don't know, like 2,500 members. Is that right?
Yeah, well, 2,700, I believe,
wow.
Something like that. So yeah, the headhunter and executive recruiter community, or as the kids say, #Herc. So I like to think I'm pretty hip. I embarrass my daughter all the time, telling her how hip I am. But
all right. Uh, so
yeah.
so I take it you obviously created an inbound strategy where you've become an authority, and a lot of recruiters who are setting up either for the first time or maybe they've come from the industry are using you as a source of learning and inspiration, and they're coming to you to do that. So the next stage then, whenever they engage your services, how does that look for them? Like what type of like things do you put them through? Like what is the first like 30 to 90 days look in terms of like what like do you start like can you go through that a little bit?
Sure, sure. So really, I base my coaching, and so I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, and I base that coaching off of what I use in my current practice. One of the things that I have going for me is that all that I teach I use right now. So I wasn't a recruiter 10 years ago, and this is all theory, nor am I a digital marketer that's never recruited and it's never had a fall off. So I do this stuff right now. And so what I teach in essence is what I practice in my own practice. I practice what I preach. And the very first thing I have someone do before anything else, I'm going to look at the foundation. So oftentimes if systems aren't working, it's not the system, it's the foundation. It's not the script, it's your positioning. And so for me, I'm a big believer in marketing over sales, right? Get your branding, get all that, get the business model down. But at the same time, I'm also a big believer in action. I think for a lot of folks that want to work on the foundation, get their branding or whatever it is, or decide, hey, what niche do I want to be in? They get involved in what I call mental masturbation. It's just lots of thinking, no action. So kind of simultaneously with working on the foundation and the business model, and if you need to figure out a new niche, we'll work on that. But I'm also a big believer getting on the phone. So which means messaging and getting on the phone with people in that industry and talking to as many people as you can, finding out what their pains are, what their problems are, what issues they have with the recruiters, who do they like, who do they don't like, what recruiters do they use specifically, right? Go to those other competitors. What are they offering? What are they promising? What are the pains that you're hearing from your potential audience, and are there gaps in there? So it's a lot of action, it's a lot of hard work, but I'm a big believer you can't mentally masturbate. You have to go in there and get your hands dirty in the market and talk to people. So that's the very first thing we do. There's a lot we do after that as well, but that's the foundation.
Okay, cool. And what type of digital marketing processes do you advise them?
So there's really two primary areas we can look at, and not looking at branding, not looking at being an attractive character and setting yourself up as the leader in the industry, but in just terms of digital marketing itself, it comes down to the messaging. A lot of people like the fancy tools of Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, email, YouTube, and I do as well. It's the toys are awesome, but that's distribution. Before that, you have to look at your messaging and your content. And your content has to be relevant to your audience and has to bring them along a journey that they need to go through in order to see your service as being relevant to them. And what a lot of folks do is they pound their market with, I don't know, email messages or maybe ads that again, not relevant, or they go organic and they just post things that they think their market might be interested in, but there's nothing strategic about it, and they're not moving, again, their audience from one level to the other. So I'm a big believer in mapping out that journey. And that journey is different for you, and it's different for somebody else in the financial services market or somebody in healthcare, whatever it is, but map that journey out. And that's why you have to talk to people initially and talk to a lot, ask them, and really use that Socratic method and find out what they really need, and then map that journey out and then create content that strategically moves them from point A to point B to point C to point D in the journey they have to go through. And then we could talk about distribution systems, right? Your email, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc.
And the journey of the content, can you jump into that?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. So folks that are in my group have heard me say this many times. I harp on it, but it's big. It's true. It's very, very true in our business. Recruiters solve the problem, not the pain. Meaning, Sales manager has a position open on her team. That's the problem. We all know that. So we come in as recruiters and we say, hey, I can fill that position. I'm a specialist. And we have a proprietary process. And I find the top 15% of candidates and all those things that every other recruiter says, it don't mean anything. And that's why we're commoditized, because for the manager, she says, well, look, I'll use contingency. I normally use 3 or 4 firms. As long as you say and do the right things, you look okay. All right, I'll include you on that. You get to work for free, and whoever gets me the best candidate wins. Then the day. So you didn't sell anything. You just kind of showed up. Your shoes were spit polished, and your suit was pressed, and that was it. In order to say, take that client, that potential client, and sell them on maybe when they've never used an engaged search firm or retained search firm, say, hey, even just something as simple as pay me a $5,000 engagement fee upfront or $10,000 and we'll start the search. That's kind of painful, right? It's out of their mental model of how things work. So how do we get them to? Yes, how do we get them to go there? Well, we have to. The very first thing we have to do is speak to their pain. They don't give a shit about our process. They don't care that you find the top 10%. They don't care about your proprietary process because everybody's got one. They care about their pain. And their pain is that manager's not hitting her quota. And so now she's not hitting her quota. She's not going to get that bonus. Maybe she's working 12-hour days, or her leadership is in question, because a good leader should be able to attract and retain talent. She can't. She may not get that promotion. She's worried about her job. That's pain that's going to drive action. But what about the other kind of pain? Pain that she may not be aware of, that maybe contingency search or using lower level search is causing her. When she says, are these recruiters even screening these candidates? Well, let's look at the root cause. Maybe is it because if you have 4 contingency recruiters, they're not doing deep dives on the searches because of contingency. They're working the job boards, and there's a race to get the candidate in before the other guy. So there's very little screening, right? And there's lots of other different pain points associated with using poor recruiting models. You have to speak to that pain and illuminate it first and get them to buy into the pain and really feel it before you ever start talking about your process, because otherwise they're just not going to listen. So the journey overall, right, is you go from problem to pain. Once they're aware of pain, typically what we do as consumers, once we start to get informed a little bit about the pain, we want to be more informed. Get a rash on your arm, go to WebMD. We look at solutions. Is there a topical ointment? Is there an over-the-counter treatment? Do I need to go to a doctor? And then once we start to see a possible solution, a process that might work, next, and we look at maybe authority figures, so this person has this to say about this rash, or this person has that to say about it. Once you look at those authority figures and what they have to offer, the next thing we do is look at reviews. What do other people say about it, right? So once we go from problem to pain to process, next part of the journey is we look for social proof. How have others taken this solution and have they gotten results, right? And are they like me? Right? We want some sort of proof. And only then, once you take them through that journey, and that's a simplified version, now we start talking about our solution. And now we can actually have a call to action and talk about our price, because now they're starting to get bought in. So it's the journey to take them from that stage where they're uninformed and to create an informed buyer. So that way, when you're on the phone and pitching your higher level service, whatever it may be, they're already bought in. Because one thing I've found as well, the more you try to explain your service or justify your service on the phone or in a meeting, the less likely you are going to be able to close it. You want them to be already informed by the time you get to that point. And so the journey in terms of your content has to speak to each of those specific stages.
And I suppose the same goes for when you're dealing with a candidate as a recruiter as well. It's all those stages are exactly the same. Right? So it's,
yeah, to a certain degree, it's not quite as important as on the client side, because at the end of the day, it's the client who is paying that fee, right? The candidates don't pay our fee. The clients are paying that fee. So a lot of what we need to do as recruiters, you take that client opportunity, and how do we fit that client opportunity into that candidate's own. And a lot of recruiters are actually pretty good at that. That's for me, that's not the biggest issue. For me, it's the client side. Now I have a great example. I had a director position open for a biotech company in San Diego a few years ago. You're right by the beach, paying a lot of money, stock grants, and this company was doing great work for a position that would typically be hard to recruit for. One of the easiest searches I've ever had because candidates came out of the woodwork. But getting the client was really hard because so many recruiters wanted to work on that job. If you have a problem getting candidates, oftentimes if you have bad clients or the positions aren't very good. You're working on positions that you really have to work hard for. And sometimes the best clients make your job so much easier on the candidate side.
Let me just jump into the content piece. You mentioned before that recruiters aren't very good at marketing, and and look, it's a regimented job where the best people are regimented and they're really good at doing that and sticking to that. But if we're not very creative or good at marketing, how do we go about creating content that is creative and does have that? How would you advise like recruiters to do that?
Well, to be candid, this isn't a natural skill. This is something that you learn just like anything else. I mean, for example, your very first day as a recruiter, you're probably pretty bad at recruiting. Most of us are, but it's just a skill that we learn. So, but to get to that point, strategically, I think you really have to, again, talk to your audience first. So if you are getting into, let's say, healthcare, so you're working with, let's say, director of nursing positions, right? Talk to those people, get them on the phone, find out, again, what their needs are, what their issues are, what their pains are, to do competitive analysis. Once you kind of have mapped out, here are 5 or 6 pain points that they have in relation to, say, position being open too long. Here may be 5 or 6 other pain points that are caused by using bad recruiters or maybe lower level contingency search or what have you. Once we know those things, now you can create content about that. Now, this does take a little bit of practice and skill, but again, it's a skill I think anybody can learn. So for my clients, I simply say, look, let's say the pain is going to be, let's say, so we're seeing the same candidates from multiple recruiters. They're not being screened. There's issues with communication skills. I'm seeing all the resumes look the same. Okay, let's talk about that. And let's maybe have somebody, hey, can you talk about that as a recruiter for 5 minutes? Okay, talk about it, record it, have it transcribed. When it comes back transcribed, edit it, and boom, you've got an article. When you look at my content, I don't write anything, very rarely. It's all recorded. I edit it to make sure it's readable, to make sure it's conversational, make sure it makes sense, and I put that out as an article. Same thing with video, right? A lot of recruiters think, how do I come up with content? Well, as a recruiter, you can probably talk for a few minutes on really almost any subject in the field of recruiting. We have the knowledge. I just think that sometimes for a recruiter looking at a blank screen, thinking, well, I don't know how to start. That's the problem. Go talk to your audience, find out what they want, talk to that, record it, edit it. It's very easy to create content once you follow that process.
Gary Vee says,
and eventually,
document, don't create.
Yeah. 100%. And once you start that process, you go from like not having any ideas of what to talk about to eventually having too many ideas. Like I've got so many things I want to write about. I'm just going to pick the top few things. So that's how you get started creating content that moves people. I think for a lot of recruiters, they're stuck in this mindset of, well, I want to write an article, the top 7 interview tips. Well, everybody writes that. And it's not really speaking to a pain. It doesn't really move the needle, right? But if you can talk to a potential client that maybe, okay, so for example, here's a great one I use all the time. For example, the candidate comes in, is a perfect candidate. You love him, he loves you. It's an amazing fit. The recruiter says, man, this guy really wants the job. Here's his money. You offer him more than what you'd originally talked about, and you think it's a slam dunk. And what happens? He rejects the offer. Goes work for a competitor down the road, right? So now I say, look, that's painful. How would you feel if that recruiter you were using submitted that same candidate to your competitor? You feel betrayed. How would you feel if you found out that was common practice? It's a best practice in the world of recruiting. And at most recruiting trainers say, if you're a contingency, submit a candidate to multiple.
Hi, David. Sorry, we got to cut off there. You were talking about the pain points of selling retained or selling contingent versus retained.
Yeah, and so with that said, I think I believe I left off where, in essence, I don't necessarily believe contingency search is bad. I do contingency search as well, but I want to make sure that if I'm selling contingency or my client wants that, I want them to know what they get. And I think for a lot of us, we go and we sell the moon to get a contingency job order, and then we treat it like a contingency search, which is why clients' expectations are not met. So a lot of what I do, in addition to, again, speaking to pain, is it's also, once you speak to the pain, educating the client about what it really means. Like, what are you really getting? And if you are going to buy this thing, know what you're going to get. And if you want to buy this other thing, know what you're going to get. And I think a lot of clients aren't informed, and a lot of recruiters are afraid to inform them because they just want the job order. They just want the opportunity to work on it without pushing back for fear of losing that. And so a lot of it's speaking to pain, right? But once you get past that, now it's education, because now they're paying attention. The problem is, if you don't speak to the pain first, they're not going to pay attention to you trying to educate them.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's definitely something I need to get better at as a recruiter. Let's jump into the distribution piece, because you've talked amazingly about how to create content that brings people on a journey, and all the stuff that we should have in it. How then do we get it out to our audience? And I ask this because I don't use any paid pay-per-click stuff at all, and I've had no problems. However, I believe I'm getting better at content, but the amount of people who are viewing my stuff on LinkedIn it isn't as good as it was when I wasn't as good as I am. So I can see, since Microsoft have bought LinkedIn, that they're moving us very much towards paid content. How do you advise people to go about that process?
Okay, so once you've got your content strategy mapped out, so you're going to write on pain points and the problem areas, and then you talk about your process and value. And so there's specific pieces of content, and there's actually, I've got several types of content that you would create. So again, there's a lot of work at the beginning, I'll admit that. But once you've got that mapped out, then you look at the distribution. So the big ones are email, right? So email, that's an easy one. But you also have LinkedIn. You also have Facebook, there's YouTube. I'm not a big Twitter guy, but I know a lot of folks are on Twitter. But I'm a big believer, though, that if you're trying to post organically, then you're left to the whims of change.
So we're left to the wind, you were saying?
Yes. So for post organically, you're left to the whims of chance, right? So I post an article about pain, content about pain. 2-3% of my market might see it because it's organic. I post my next one about, say, process, right? I'm taking them along that journey. The folks who read that didn't read my first one, right? Because it's all organic. So all paid advertising really is, and forget about pay-per-click, forget about lead generation. All it really is you're just making sure you're paying for access. You're just making sure that every little nook and cranny in your market is seeing in essence, the billboards you're putting up, right? I call it the billboard effect. You go to work every day, you commute one direction. There's this one billboard they see every single day. That billboard might be the only billboard for that, let's say, that personal injury attorney in existence, right? For that attorney. But to you, that person's everywhere because that person is top of mind in your bubble of existence in that commute, right? So that person's paying for access. Paid advertising is simply, I'm making sure my content is out there on, say, Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course, email is free. But in essence, I'm making sure that for the folks that aren't paying attention on LinkedIn, I get them on Facebook. Folks that aren't on Facebook, and there's a lot that aren't, so I'm getting them on email. I'm getting them on YouTube, and I want to make sure that everybody sees that content out there, and it doesn't have to cost a lot. You're not marketing out to 30,000, 50,000 people. A great recruiter, their niche should only be really marketing out to maybe 1,000 to 2,000 people, at most, because you want to be be the authority and the big fish in that very small pond, because you don't need a lot of clients, you don't need a lot of placements to make an amazing living. And recruiters should be all things to all people. So I think paid advertising to a small market is just simply we're paying for access, and that's all we're doing.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. Yeah. I could carry on asking you questions all day, but I'd love to get you back on the show another time to cover a whole other range of subjects. I've really enjoyed speaking to you, and I've learned a lot. And could we just finish up with you talking a little bit about where people can find you, what services you're offering, and crack on with that.
Sure. Well, so you can visit me at davidstephenpatterson.com, and Stephen is spelled Stephen. So davidstephenpatterson.com. You can also find me on Facebook at the same name. You can find me in the Headhunter and Executive Recruiter Community Facebook group on Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find. So reach out to me, and if you're ever interested, if anybody out there is interested in one-on-one coaching, there's an application process. I can't work with everybody, and I'm pretty strict with who I work with, but reach out to me. We can see if it might be a fit. And if it's not, I'll do my best to point you in the right direction of who might be able to help you.
David, really, really appreciate your time. And you've just been a fantastic guest. You have a wealth of knowledge, and you've articulated it brilliantly. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It was great talking to you as well.
Take care, David.
All right. Thanks. You too.
A massive thank you to David Patterson. You know, I'm a bit skeptical of business coaches. I think it's because I've set up my own business and I've gone to uni, and so I've always kind of self-learned, and you know, I'm kind of takes a bit for me to be impressed by somebody who offers a coaching service. And look, there's a lot of shysters out there, but he's not one of them, and I was really impressed with him. I think if I was to sidestep into another discipline, I'd love to get him on board as a mentor. I think he's one of the only ones that I've come across that could really go into sharpening up your sales skills, but also help you put in place your branding, marketing, and social strategy, so you know that you're on track and you've got somebody that you could bounce ideas off, that's credible, that's still in the business, that's still running a desk. Very impressed with him. And if you're not a member of his group on Facebook, jump in, get involved. It'd be well worth your while. All right, guys, till next week. Take care. God bless. Hope you all learned something. And please, please, please give us a 5-star review and drop us a little comment on iTunes. It would mean the world to us. Thanks. Bye.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.